is going to be recorded so we can put it on our YouTube channel for anyone who wants to come back and see it later. And without further ado, let's get started here. Okay, hold on. Got a video clip in here. I'm going to cross my fingers when we get to it. We're going to be able to see that. And I'm not sure if I'm sharing what I need to. Hold on. There we go. All right. So if you can't see the screen, the PowerPoint screen that says today's date and the topic, I need somebody to unmute and let me know right now, because otherwise I'm going to act like you can see this.
You're good, Marie.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so we're here to talk about multidisciplinary teams today. Of the PowerPoint or of the presentations that NDCI gets, you know, interest or questions about getting information on, multidisciplinary teams and roles are some of the probably the most popular, along with incentives and sanctions, are probably some of the most popular ones that they get asked to do. And, you know, it makes sense because if you have new team members or you are a brand new team, hopefully if you're a brand new team, you've been through implementation training. But the truth is that a lot of teams start accepting participants and programs are up and running before they ever actually get the implementation training. And so a lot of times, you know, this is something that you get after you've already started being teamy. And whatever that means for you. But this is best practice standard 8. And basically it talks about how we now know, because this is included in our 10 key components as well, but we now know that a multidisciplinary team is really important to deliver the best outcomes for the participants in our recovery courts. And we're going to talk about the different things that basically make that so. This is just my little, if you have issues, here's my phone number. That is my personal cell. You can text me and call me on. And if you have any questions, follow-up questions, you can email me here. So there's that, in case you need that. All right, so there are a number of components to the multidisciplinary team conversation, and that is who should be on the team, what do the staffings look like? Who should be there and what should we be discussing? What kind of information gets shared and what are the logistics of sharing that information? How does the team communicate, particularly in staffing and out of staffing? And how are decisions made as a team? Because we have a variety of people coming from a variety of roles in community and in court. And, you know, it's not necessarily the cleanest, most balanced, most perfect marriage when it comes to trying to decide what to do about cases and about participants moving through the programs. What status hearings looks like, who should be there, and what should be discussed, and then team training. I have a slide on team training, and I'm going to knock that. I'm going to just say right now, in terms of team training, that if you are one of the folks that's here today, it's likely that you're one of those individuals that, you know, values training anyway. And so you tend to go to training because you believe in the value of it. And you're probably not the one that this information that needs to hear this information. But team training really is about ensuring that you get implementation training for your team, that you have ongoing annual training for your team, and that you have new member and team member training. Those are the 3 types of trainings that everybody needs so that you don't stay stagnant and so that you can keep up with what the current information is. Because as we know, and we're going to talk a little bit of that in here, we continue to receive more and more information about what works and what doesn't work and what's the most helpful. I know when I think about training specifically around pre-court staff meetings is a great example of how far we have come in our understanding of how to make pre-court staff meetings as effective as possible. And, especially in the early days when we had the 10 key components and not much else, there wasn't really any direction about pre-court staff meetings and what you should and shouldn't be doing in there and who should and shouldn't be participating in them. And we do now. So hopefully this isn't new information, but what we do know is that the evidence suggests and is pretty clear that if these people are on the team, you're going to have the most cost-effective and produce the best outcomes possible for a recovery court. And if any of these people are not on the team, your cost effectiveness and participant outcomes diminish with each of these individuals that does not participate. We've seen this where maybe a jurisdiction's having a problem getting a prosecutor to the table and regularly participating. If this were not on Zoom and we had more than an hour, would love to talk about and think through why prosecutors specifically, for example, if they're not participating, would include a lack or a reduced outcomes for participants and programs and produce less cost-effective outcomes. And, we could think through those things. Obviously, these all include key components to what a recovery court is. The judge is the leader. The judge is the one that makes the final decisions. The judge is the one that is able to enforce sanctions. The judge is also the one that when you ask participants the opinion of the judge, and incentives and sanctions from the judge are much more effective from the judge than from any other team member on the team. And so the judge plays a vital role. And if you don't have a judge regularly consistently at staffings or as part of the team, then you're limping along really. And some teams find themselves in these situations when there wasn't a whole lot they could do about it. And so they can tell you how hard it is to have drug court without a judge because that role is so vital. There has to be somebody keeping things together and keeping the team kind of, going in the same direction and knowing what the goals are, that when there are new team members that come on, that they know what in the world is happening, that the community knows about you. There are so many things that go under the director coordinator job description that person is an extremely vital component to the program. And I have seen teams that are run without this position. And a lot of times people don't really know what's going on. When you start talking to the team members, they're pretty clueless about what other team members are supposed to do, about whether they're doing the right thing. They don't have a lot of information that a team with a coordinator would have. I mean, it's kind of obvious when the team doesn't have this position. Community too. A lot of times this person is responsible for at least making the initial reaching out to the community for support and resources, making sure stakeholders are aware, et cetera. And when that doesn't happen, then there are a lot of lack of resources that you find on a team. It just becomes really clear when you don't have that person. Of course, you need supervision. You need to be able to follow that person through with the court requirements and things that they're supposed to do as part of the program and part of supervision. You need treatment because that is also a vital, the whole reason that drug courts are around is so that people can receive services, and that is in the form of substance use disorder or mental health treatment. So that person has to be at the table or you have a big gap in your services, right? Defense counsel, it is very important. And I think especially as drug courts move forward and there's more case law coming out about what you should and shouldn't be doing, and about constitutional and rights. I think that it is important for folks to understand that the public defender plays a really vital role in ensuring due process is considered and that participants are able to utilize this person when they need to. And then, of course, the prosecutor needs to be there. The prosecutor can play a large part in helping a person through the system, making the transition and the process and the completion or termination, depending on what that is, it's kind of smoother. The prosecutor has a lot of power in the system and therefore can help streamline, the whole process in a way that a lot of other team members cannot. They can also handle issues that are, judicial court issues for participants if they so choose, so that some of the resources of the court are not kind of tied up in that person that is a participant in your program. And then law enforcement can help with curfews. They can give you information about what's going on in the community, especially the using community, the criminal aspect of the community. I mean, there are so many things the law enforcement does, not to mention there is a lot of goodwill with participants that are able to establish relationships that are not negative with law enforcement. I mean, we can spend a lot of time just talking about the people that are on the team, but these are some of the reasons why studies reveal that these people, this is the super crew, so to speak. If you want to have a super crew as a team, this is the one you need. Okay, move on. All right. Who should not be on your team? If you don't have a release from the participant for the individuals that are on your team and what's being discussed, that person, that should happen. There should be a release, and anyone not covered by that release should not be on your team. If you have graduates, graduates are great. Do not hear me say and do not repeat that I've said anything negative about graduates, okay? But graduates who are not employees, that don't have some time, outside of your program and who have not, who do not have the credentials to be something on your team, like a certified peer, case manager, etc., that person should not be on your team. They should not be in staffing, specifically listening to information about other participants. Faith-based community members, okay? You can have people that are part of the larger support system of your team and of your program, but there is, unless a faith-based community member is also providing treatment services, housing services, any of these services specifically on a case plan or a treatment plan, then that person should not be sitting on your team. They should not be in there listening to information, personal and private information about individuals and their treatment. They should not be giving advice to the court or to treatment about a person's progress and participation in the program. They play a role in programs. They should not be on a team. Mentors, peers, and volunteers, again, they play a great role. Veterans treatment courts have mentors, and they are a vital component of a mentor court. They should not be on the team that's going into staffing, okay? So peers, certified peers or peers in general, that could be graduates or non-graduates, volunteers that may volunteer their services through community-based, programs in the community. Those should not be on your team in terms of who is sitting in the room, particularly at staffings. They may be a vital component to services for your program, but they should not be on the team, that core team that I was just identifying in the last slide. And then treatment providers that are not your primary treatment provider. It's very unusual for me to go and visit a team anywhere in the country that doesn't have treatment providers that, you know, they refer to when they need to, but they don't always have a person. So if you have a treatment provider like that isn't a primary treatment provider, maybe they provide inpatient treatment to you. So, you know, you might have somebody at their program for 30 days or something, and then they come back. That person should not be sitting on your team every week listening to. In fact, I would suggest that if you have multiple treatment providers, that you could consider that treatment. If you've got multiple treatment providers, that treatment could not stay for other people's report outs. That's a whole other thing that we could discuss. Some programs do that and some don't. Okay. Moving on, because I know you guys are like, you know, confidentiality and what does that mean? Okay, so pre-court staff meetings. I highlighted the components of this language that comes straight out of the best practice standards that I think is the most pertinent for us to focus on today. And that is basically the three main functions of a staff meeting. And I think especially for older programs where the team knows each other really well and you've built this rapport and you've become friends even, that this focus sort of kind of, you know, isn't necessarily there in the way that maybe a newly established team is. However, if you have new team members coming onto your team, and they're walking into a situation where a bunch of friends are hanging out and they're not valuing anybody's time and they don't have the same rapport, they're the odd man out and you are spending a whole lot of time doing a whole lot of nothing. And it's not, it can be hard for a new team member to walk in on a situation like that. And so, you know, being thoughtful about what the pre-court staff meeting is actually for, and that is to review the participants' progress. You know, what phase are they in? What the heck are they doing? Are they in this phase where they're working on treatment, and how is that going? Are they in the phase where they are looking for a job, or they have gone back to school, and how is that going? Are they wanting to reunify with a family, and how is that going? What's happening with them? Determine appropriate actions to improve outcomes. Do they need to be incentivized, sanctioned, or both? What needs to happen? What message needs to come from the judge or from the team via the judge about their behavior so that you can help them be better and better and better every single time they come to court and interact with that team? Prepare for status hearings in court. So if you have information that you're wanting to share with participants that are coming to court, usually right after staffing, right? Not always, but usually right after staffing. You want to ensure that the team, with the leadership of the judge, has thoroughly discussed what needs to happen in court. Court is theater. Court is the opportunity for everybody to witness the behavior modification at its finest, right? And so the status hearing, the pre-court staff meeting is really designed for you to put your game plan together based on the information that you have, so that when you go out and the judge and perhaps other team members interact with the participant, that you are focused on making sure the participant knows, you know, what's up. You know, they are doing well, they're not doing well, and these are the outcomes because of that. Because the whole purpose is to move them through the program and to ensure that the best outcomes possible are there for them. And while it is always their choice, when you are able to think about it in those terms and focus on the goal for the participant, staff meetings become much more clear and concise. Now, incentives and sanctions and what to do with those, we all know that ends up muddying the water a little bit because those can be kind of frustrating. This is not the incentives and sanctions presentation, but if you've been doing this for a little while, you know that you can really get in the weeds with those, right? Especially, I would imagine, I'm not on the team, but I would imagine, especially during the pandemic when you've got maybe Zoom meetings happening and all kinds of crazy stuff going on. I also want to make sure that, we're going to get to that with information here in a minute. So I'm going to stop that for a second. So this is basically the data around pre-court staff meetings. When all these people that we were talking about in the first slide about team composition, when all those people show up, then drug courts are 50% more effective at reducing recidivism than their counterparts. So basically, for teams that don't have all these people showing up, right, versus teams that do have all these people showing up. And I also highlighted an important piece here that I want you to see. It is highlighted and underlined, or bolded and underlined, and it says, on a consistent basis. And I think this is pretty important because I also see this on teams where, yes, you have MOUs, and yes, the prosecutor is on the team, and yes, law enforcement is on the team, and yes, you even have a judge. But when you start asking team members, when you start interviewing them, because I interviewed team members across the country, it comes out that, in fact, the prosecutor is hardly there, or the judge actually is really gone a lot, or treatment, the report out for treatment ends up being the coordinator. I mean, when you start digging down, then you find out that these people are on the team in name only, or when it's convenient. They're not actually on the team in terms of the consistency of being together and discussing and reviewing these cases. And so I think it's important to understand that this study is about them actually being there, not just in name only or when it's convenient. And drug courts were nearly twice as cost effective when defense counsel attended staffings consistently, and were more than twice as effective at reducing recidivism when the program coordinator, treatment, and law enforcement were consistently at staffings. This is really valuable information. So just know that if you got team members who are sort of petering off and not really consistently being there, maybe because they're tired of being there, maybe because the precedent is not set that their value is there, that they're a valuable member of the team, because there's still some political discussion amongst the powers that be around the value of the program. And so some education and conversation around the bigger players need to happen so that you can get the support of that particular office. I'm thinking specifically of like the public defender or the prosecutor's office. Those kinds of things. Maybe there needs to be a little work on that end so that the value of being present, is instilled in each of the players, because I've seen it a lot of times. There are MOUs in place, or at least there's verbal acknowledgement and there is a support. But when it comes down to it, if a person from your office isn't showing up, then that's not really what a recovery court is about. We need all the people there to be our best selves. Okay, sharing information. Oh, okay, that's okay. I just saw your note, Rebecca. I don't know why that is, but I'm not too worried about it. I'm sorry you guys can't see this then. If you can't see the main slide. And so that makes me want to kind of pull this out. If you're seeing my notes, that means you're not getting a really good kind of picture of the slide. Sorry about that. I don't know why you're not doing that. Anyway, so sharing information. Information is necessary to appraise participant progress in treatment and compliance, okay? The information that is shared amongst amongst roles is necessary to determine the participant's progress or to understand the participant's progress in treatment and compliance with the court. Okay. Information that is really outside of these two things is extraneous and unnecessary. And I think that is another really important point to staffings, to pre-court staffings, because if you focus on really what you're there about, which is, are they doing what they need for the court? Are they doing what they need for treatment? And you're not focusing on any of the other stuff, then there isn't any reason for you to expend a whole lot of time having conversations about participants that aren't really struggling, that you're not struggling to figure out how to help. And there are those, obviously. MOUs need to be in place. And I mean like conversations need to have been had, especially on the front end with, the district attorney's office and the public defender's office and the treatment provider that has agreed to participate on the team. Supervision. It is really important for people on the very front end to know exactly what it is that's expected of them. And MOUs should include that they are coming to pre-court staffing and that they are coming to the status hearings and that they are doing whatever it is that's important for their role, right? To be as effective of a team as possible. When you kind of water that down with, I talked to the public defender's office and they're going to have somebody there. Well, then it's not really clear to the person that's actually showing up and sitting their butts in the chair necessarily what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to interact. And we all know, if you've been on a treatment team or a recovery court team for any length of time, that you've got sort of the court understanding of things and the treatment understanding of things. And when you begin to partner those, it can be a struggle. Treatment has an idea of confidentiality. Public defenders have an idea of confidentiality. Supervision has an idea of their expectations and the kind of information they'd like to know to supervise their participant. Not everybody has the same idea, and it's not like everybody's throwing out their idea when they walk in the door necessarily either. So it's really important to have those MOUs in place so people are really clear about what they're supposed to be doing. And the participants need to understand who is talking about them and what kind of information is being discussed about them. In the spirit of transparency, in the spirit of therapeutic jurisprudence, it is important for participants to know, who the players are and, what they're going to be talking about with them. We know that our population tends to be mistrustful and, on the side of paranoid, right? So giving them the information up front is important and is going to start building that rapport that we need with them so that they can get better. I will give you this PowerPoint too, and you can see all this information. Let's talk about the confidentiality a little bit. So we do need releases of information from all the participants. They need to be voluntary. They need to, sign consent. They need to know who they're signing the consent for, and they need to know the specific information. It's also true that in the context of a recovery court and/or treatment in the criminal justice system, there is information that can be shared about treatment progress and performance that is more than the standard confidentiality in terms of the medical confidentiality that treatment professionals often think of. And I know that when drug courts first started, it was a source of anxiety and frustration and tenderness, and why we often struggled to build those partnerships, because treatment had a hard time with all the information that was being asked. And I think legitimately, there was probably more information being asked than was necessary, on the front end. And so we have had to kind of come together over a long period of time. But let's be clear, that it is not the job of the individuals on the treatment court team to rifle through the personal information of each of the participants. It is not the job of the treatment court team, the recovery court team, to gossip about families and participants perhaps you've known for a really long time because their families for generations have been in the justice system, and so you know them, or they live in your neighborhood, or go to your, their grandpa or grandparents or aunts and uncles went to your church or whatever. I do realize that that is that's a truth, that a lot of times the folks that are in the justice system or on the treatment side have seen people over and over and over again, perhaps, that are the participant or are attached to the participant. And within the context of understanding the participant's progress and participation in the program, that's one thing. But if you're sitting there finding yourself talking about the participant and all of the gory details of their lives, that's not really appropriate in staffing. And it sets a precedent of that hopefully if your participant was sitting there, you would think twice about. And in fact, that might be a way to think about staffing. Is how would you talk about that person if they were sitting there at the table with you? And if you think about it that way, you may be more thoughtful and sensitive about the kinds of information that you discuss as a team. And I do think that's important. It's also why staffings begin to get too lengthy, because there's information being discussed that doesn't really need to be discussed, and is not necessary to appraise the participant's progress in treatment and compliance to the conditions of the program. These are the kinds of things that you should be talking about. The results of assessments, whether they've attended appointments, what are the results of the drug screens, what is on their treatment plan, and where are they at with attaining those goals? How are they feeling? Are they on medication? And how is that going? Do they need to see the doctor? Are they being compliant with the follow-up appointments with them? What phase are they in, and how close are they to being able to phase up? Are they going to see their probation officer? Are they doing what's in their case plan? Are they staying out of trouble? Are they behaving appropriately to not only other participants, just to staff, right? I mean, I've been in staffings where participants have been inappropriate to the treatment providers or to the case managers or to their probation officers, either because they're just, they're angry and resentful, or, they're flirting. Those kinds of things pop up. And if you've been doing this, that, it's just something that happens. And while it doesn't need to be a gossip session, it does need to be addressed if the person is behaving inappropriately towards participants or other staff. So that's the kind of information that should be discussed in staffing, particularly about participants. I see your comment, Ginger. Yeah. Okay. Team communication and decision making. So, if we go back to the very, very first slide, where I basically, we acknowledged that, while recovery courts have been around for a couple of decades now, it is still true that we're marrying, or we are partnering these disciplines together, and it is not necessarily just the smoothest fit. It does take a little while to get used to, and it does take a while to understand, what's my role in this, and, what am I doing versus what that person is doing. How do we ensure that we are focused on what we need to be focused on, instead of getting all bent out of shape because people have different opinions or expertise than we have, and therefore, their perspective is different. Okay. It's also important that as the leader of the team, that the judge makes sure that everybody has a chance to participate. I have seen too many times where there are people on a team that never say a darn thing. And while I'm visiting and obviously I am taking a snapshot of the situation, when I am interviewing the members of the team, it plays out as consistent in their responses to questions too. You can tell that that person either does not feel that their opinion is valid or valued, that they are unsure about what it is that they're supposed to do, and so they are quiet, that they don't really care to be there, and so they are quiet, or there are individuals on the team that just take up all the time, and therefore, there isn't really an opportunity for everybody to express their concerns or suggestions on how to move forward with the participant. And so it is really up to the judge to make sure that. I was just in Georgia. I just had a technical assistance visit with a team in Clayton County, Georgia, and I loved the way that their judge conducted the staff meeting, because there were obvious people that did the initial report out, but he ensured that he asked each person on the team if they had anything else to add before moving on to the next person. And I thought that was pretty cool, because there were a couple more quieter team members. One of them was a brand new team member, for example. They just, maybe their personality isn't such that they're loud and, first. Or whatever. And so, he ensured that, to them, the message from the judge was, your opinion and your input on this team is valuable. You're not just sitting there because we need somebody to warm the seat that you're sitting in. You're not just there because we didn't feel you had anything else better to do with your time. You're not just there because, we don't really care what you have to say, but we want to make sure that your boss thinks that we care. The judge asked every person on the team, and I think that sends a really important message about the value of each person sitting in the room. And so I would suggest that if that's not something that you do, that's something that you consider doing, because I think a lot of times team members, especially new team members, will get into that situation. They don't really yet understand, or they aren't really sure about the value that brings. And I think specifically about law enforcement, when they're unsure about how they're supposed to engage and about their value in, in feedback, and the public defender. Just food for thought there. I'll look down here. Yep. And you can read all that later. Okay, so I have this. It's a couple minutes long, but I was watching things that I, was trying to find something that I thought would be like what a team meeting is. And this particular team, they're not a recovery court team, but I think it was like spot on. And you can give me your opinion about whether I should use this again. Hopefully it'll work. Drop it in chat if you can't hear or see this, okay? Hold on a minute. Okay, like it is muted. Why is it muted? Oh no. All right, hold on. I know we got issues. All right, this might not happen. I'm gonna try again. It might be because of my headset. I didn't try this with my headset earlier. I put this on for talking to you guys. Let's see if it will work if I change this real quick. Can you guys see that and hear that? I don't see anybody responding.
No, we can't.
You cannot. Okay, hold on. Can you see the YouTube screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And can you hear this?
Yes.
All right, thanks for coming, guys. I just wanted to take a few minutes and talk
You can hear that?
Yes.
Okay.
about some ideas for the marketing strategy this year. So if you got one, just throw it out there. I'd love to hear 'em.
Yeah, how long is this meeting supposed to last? The schedule wasn't exactly clear.
Should be out of here in 30.
Is that approximate or
Hey guys, sorry I'm a couple minutes late. I got caught in traffic.
7 minutes, actually?
What's that?
Couple is 2.
So what we're doing is we're just coming up with some ideas for our new marketing strategy.
Sure.
So, anyone?
I think we should implement Pinterest.
Ooh, that's a fun idea.
What about a publicity event in the park?
Interesting. But how are you going to plan around the weather? What if it rains?
So we'll party in the rain.
Okay, just want to emphasize there's no bad ideas here. We're just brainstorming. So.
Yeah, I'm just really thinking it'll be a huge waste of money to try to plan around the weather.
Yeah, okay, we get your concerns. Nancy, thank you.
Okay, anyone else have an idea? Ephraim?
I've always wanted to see rain fall down all at once in a big splash instead of small drops over time. I mean, think how it could impact the irrigation system.
Okay. Terry?
Well, I have an idea from my previous job that I had last year. But, let me take that back a little bit. I have this wonderful idea, but it doesn't really make sense unless I just take it back a second and bring it forward together. It was like 3 weeks ago that I remember he said something that I couldn't understand.
Hold on a second, Terry. Hold on. Thanks for pointing. Here's what we need to do, okay? Lauren, you got this? We do a video submission contest on YouTube.
Oh, that's
okay?
been done.
It'll be on Facebook, it'll be on Pinterest, it'll be on
If
Twitter.
we do something with technology, we lose the senior demographic.
So, you guys want to see an example?
Should we be moving on to the next topic? I mean, it's already quarter after.
Quarter after. That's funny.
Who knows how to put this on the screen? Up there, because you're not going to be able to, I want you to see all the details. We have a cable. Does this cable work?
I think that's power.
I don't know if on the there's an
This one.
HDMI
That cord's not gonna be long
in
enough.
the back.
Does that
there
remote
could be
go to
like
the
2 or 3,
TV?
like HDMI 1,
Plenty of time,
HDMI
guys.
2,
No rush.
HDMI
This isn't
3,
working.
I got a
and
green
then they
marker.
coincide
Call the
with
IT
each
guy.
other with,
Wait,
there's
turn
also,
what off and back
what
on?
do you call it? S-video.
Hello?
Okay, I've got it working.
Hit play. Okay, now imagine hundreds of those floating around the web. Actually, do you want to watch it one more time?
No, please.
Trip, I think you're onto something with this idea. I really like it. Carol, did you get that down?
Yeah, got it.
Sorry, what is C-test up sub YT pros?
Well, I'm abbreviating to make room for all these great ideas. Contest, uploading it to YouTube, funniest, and you get a prize.
Wait, where are the other ideas?
And time.
Wait, where y'all going? We still have 100% of the things to accomplish.
Monday. Apps and data. That way.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And perhaps that was one of those instances where the media wasn't worth the time it took. I don't know. But I do think that that is a great example. I don't know how many of you guys are looking at those identified characters and thinking, oh my gosh, we have every single one of those on our team. But I was relating to it for sure. And so I do think it's important for us to remember that, you know, people come to the table with their own kind of, you know, worldview, point of view, expertise. The reason that all of the people, if you have the players that we have identified as needing to be on the team, if those are the players in the room, then everyone in the room with you at that point has value and has a reason to be sitting in the chairs with you. And they're going to have information about what needs to happen as you proceed with the participant and with your processes. They have information that you don't necessarily have. And so if we all remember that we're not going to all have the same information and that each person in the room has value and that we need to ensure that everybody has the opportunity to be heard, we're not only going to grow as a team member, but we're going to grow as a team. I do realize I'm not I'm not on cloud nine or idealistic. I realize that sometimes the person that is chosen to be on the team by an organization is not the best fit or happy to be there or, you know, whatever. I mean, there are all kinds of reasons why team communication and decision-making can be difficult. That doesn't mean it's not worth the effort for the participant, though. And sometimes a team member, if you follow some basic strategies that everybody is aware of, you can perhaps be more successful. I also think when I want to make sure I keep track of my time, I also think when you focus on those ideas that we were talking about earlier about pre-court staffing, what it is that you're there to do, as opposed to, you know, not really having a specific goal in mind when you're sitting there together. If everybody knows what that is, that also helps with the process, even if there's a little friction for whatever reason that always is or at the moment is going on with your team. And I wanted to share this information with you because there have been some drug courts, some recovery courts that have participated in studies using this network for the improvement of addiction treatment. It's an organizational improvement model, and there's a whole component to how this model is implemented that is over and above the scope of this conversation and is really over and above the scope of just communication and decision making. It really is a systemic Morgan model. And so if you're interested in that, you can take a further look at it. It's going to be in the notes. You can look it up. You can Google it. You can find it that way. But for the purposes of the recovery court, what they have found is recovery courts that implement these communication and decision-making strategies have improved their communication and have improved their outcomes as a result. And so I want to make sure I share this with you. It's also in the best practice standards. So you can find this information in the reference section of Standard 8 when it talks about the teams. Okay? I think these are the last couple slides I have. So first, and you know, what's funny to me is when you look at these, it's not like it's rocket science at all. It's stuff that you've heard. It's stuff that any professional that has been professionaling for any length of time is going to know. I do think, though, it's easy when we get on a new team, or if we're on an old team. And I don't mean old I mean like a mature team, like a seasoned team, that, you know, we can forget to do these things because we've built relationships, you know, or not built relationships, that we've formed opinions, etc. So I encourage you, no matter where you come in that you think that you try to put on some fresh glasses and look at this information and how you might interact with your team with a clean lens, especially if you are on a team that is struggling to communicate and make decisions for whatever reason. Communications, aren't ego-centered. Think about the purpose, the reason that you're there, and what you have to bring instead of trying to win, trying to make your idea the best. Make sure that everyone on the team, no matter what their participation is on the team, that they have an equal opportunity to have their say. That when you are listening to another person's point of view, that instead of thinking about what you're going to say next or about when it's your turn, that you listen to what it is that they're saying. That you express appreciation, even if you disagree with somebody, that you express appreciation for the fact that they put it out there, okay? And then you let them know why they disagree with you, why you disagree with them. Sorry, I said that backwards. And if there is a place in their point that you agree with, point it out, right? Find the common ground. I do think when it comes to decision making and communication with a group of people, it is important if you begin to knit that you can get somewhere if you begin to knit together the places where you agree versus where you're lost and you're having a hard time coming together, because those points of agreement are what can knit your final decision and outcome together. So find that common ground. Treatment folks, therapists learn this, the art of reframing, and in fact, other folks might too, learn the art of reframing so that you can make sure that people understand, or that you understand, and that people know that you heard what's going on, and do it in a way that isn't hostile or demeaning or sarcastic. You know who you are. Be inclusive, making sure everybody has an opportunity to participate, and especially if they have an area of expertise that's really needed for that. Show understanding, participate in empathetic listening, which is try to put yourself in the position of the other person. If you're struggling because you think that they're not listening to you, they might be in the same exact position where they are struggling because you aren't listening to them. So make that effort, sit back and think, okay, so if I wasn't the whatever, if I was not the treatment person and I was the public defender and part of my ethics was X, Y, and Z, then, what would this be like for me? And, how would my stance be different? So try to practice that empathetic listening. And in the end, the judge can recap everything that's going on, sort of, sum up the situation with all the points that are being made, so that he or she here, is able to show the team that he or she heard everything that was said before saying, okay, and so I think this is what, if we can't come to some consensus here at this point, then this is what I'm going to do. And that information and that process can happen whether people are agreeing or disagreeing, for that matter, right? I mean, this process, if you're doing these things, your communication and decision making is hopefully going pretty well. But even if it's not, either way, it can. This information can be helpful in coming to decisions as a team. Ideally, you'd want consensus, but in the end, the judge is going to make a decision, and that judge might even be after you get out of the room and the judge hears the participant's perspective, right? That's possible too. All members need to be at the status hearings. All of those people that were in the original slide, all those people should also be in the status hearings, and all those people should be in the status hearings consistently. Again, your cost effectiveness, which I know that we don't necessarily always talk about cost effectiveness as much anymore, but you still want to make sure that you're cost effective for your community, because the minute recovery courts stop being cost effective, and or people catch on that your program's not cost effective because something comes up that they've determined that, then you're no longer the valued game in town, and they're going to figure out something else to do besides your recovery court in order to get better outcomes in a cost-effective manner, because that is important. It's one of the things that we're built on. It's one of the things that we have always stated as a field, that we are cost-effective. If you do it this way, you are cost effective. But if you have people that aren't showing up for your staffings or your status hearings, that diminishes. So there is a lot of value in trying to find ways to make sure that everybody is engaged. We talked about team training already. See, I did that, and I think it was literally like noon. Okay, so thank you, everybody. I'm going to stop sharing this so I can see faces if anybody's going to show them to me. You'll get an email after the fact. I appreciate you being here. I'll stick around for a few minutes so that if you want to ask any questions or have any comments about what we just went through really quickly, that you can do that. So I'm going to hang out, and everybody else, if you're not hanging out, have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for being with us today. I'm also going to stop recording because we don't have to record